we talked about being a monk involving renunciation. Of the 10 perfections, it's probably the one I find the most difficult. In terms of something like, say, truthfulness is easy to understand, that it has immediate beneficial results, and you can see the effects if you lie. But renunciation is more problematic, because I guess if you take it to an extreme, you're into asceticism. It's also, I guess, where you make a decision to renounce, and then you fail in that volition, then you've got guilt and all those sort of things coming up.
But why are you renouncing? What is the purpose of a renunciation? See, because I'm all one for failing at things. I don't find failing at things a problem, because that's how I get better at something. So it's the absence of self-concern with regard to something not working out quite as well as you wanted that means that you can try again. You can do it again, and perhaps even do it better next time. So you're turning your weakness into a strength, gradually over time. So it's understanding what the purpose of renunciation is. If it's to fulfill the parami because you're told you need to fulfill the parami, then in essence you've misunderstood. Whereas for you, perhaps truthfulness, you understand the underlying purpose behind the truthfulness, and therefore it's not an issue. And I go back to that example in the Pali Canon of the king who renounced his kingdom or prince or whatever it was, and was sat under a tree going bliss, bliss, because he had got something back for his renunciation.
Yes, let go of a burden. But I suppose I see renunciation as a form of control. So I will control by will these
urges.
Urges, yeah.
And that's where the learning has to go on, because it's not about it. See, because getting down to brass tacks, a monastic is celibate. And chooses, that is part of the choice of going into a monastery. I found that a tremendous relief, I have to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have to. That doesn't mean that the desire for, however we shall put it, doesn't come up. Of course it comes up. Why? Because I'm a human being. Because it's in our DNA. Because we have to keep the species going. But as soon as you start to understand that it is actually a perfectly normal desire, that it in and of itself it's not reprehensible. It's just what it is. It only becomes reprehensible when we fall into sexual misconduct, which is taking advantage of others in order for our own sexual gratification. When you become aware of that, it means that far from it being a kind of suppression or repression of those urges, it is actually you experience it fully, you acknowledge what it is, and it is very energizing, because you're not fighting with the desire, you're acknowledging it. You're just choosing not to act upon it.
Okay.
Now, just to carry on that just a little bit more, you asked me what I found difficult about recluseship.
Yeah.
Every spring, without fail, I would unconsciously go into my teacher's office and say, I've really got to leave, I've got to disrobe. And he'll just laugh at me and ask me why, and I'd make up all these reasons, but we know what it was. It was spring. You know, it's like the sap was rising all around me, and I'm just a part of all that. And finally, after a few years of getting used to that, I really cracked that whole sexual instinct. Yeah. So it's not hammering down the desire. It's understanding it. But you understand it through renouncing the acting upon it.
But I suppose, doesn't the word renunciation imply an active component? So there's mindfulness of the arising of a desire, and then renouncing
using another example. I renounced my interest in music when I became a monk, didn't I? I had no access to music other than the contents of my head, which I can assure you remembered every single track of every album I ever owned. And I would repeatedly go over a very small little riff in my head in meditation endlessly until I got over that. But I had renounced the worldly life, including music, right? But that doesn't mean I don't like music. I didn't stop liking music. I had renounced something that was small to gain something greater from that renunciation. It didn't prevent me from enjoying music, and it doesn't prevent me from enjoying music now. Now I've left the monastic order. I can go to a gig, I can listen to music all I like. But I had renounced the dependency upon that for my happiness, essentially. Recognising that music comes and goes. It's very ephemeral. Beautiful, fun, interesting, but ultimately wasn't going to set me free from dukkha, so I renounced it. And that's the beautiful thing about the training is at the end of the training, the world comes back to you, but now it's been transformed. You understand it in a way you hadn't before, and there's no dependency upon those things, but you can still enjoy them. And so, yeah, does that get closer to the issue?
It does. I guess I'm just sort of thinking, in a monastery, it's obviously easier to you've made a definite decision to renounce. Obviously, in a lay life, you'd still have access to your record collection and the rest of it, and therefore.
And what's wrong with that?
Nothing, I suppose.
No,
So.
it's only a problem if there is a reliance on those things for your happiness.
But don't we all have that through, watching TV programs and eating food and?
Well, I mean,
whatever.
eating food would die if we didn't. You wouldn't die if you didn't watch EastEnders. So it's a question of understanding the true nature of these objects. Now, one of the ways that you can truly understand, when somebody comes in for a week's retreat, they are renouncing their mobile phone, the internet, the TV, the radio, their loved ones, for a week. Yeah? We're not saying you've got to get rid of them. We're not saying it's wrong to have them. It's the dependency upon those things for your security. Those things, your loved ones are not things, but you understand what I mean. It's the dependency upon for your sense of purpose, well-being, self-view, happiness, whatever it is that you use those things for to make yourself feel whole. Those things cannot do it. They're not up to it, whatever they are. And so it's not necessarily renouncing the object. It's renouncing them for a time being. So if somebody comes in on retreat and they are taken away from their normal routines, their normal lifestyle, their normal people and things, it shows up your cravings. It shows up what it is that you depend on really, really clearly. And then you can start looking at those underlying desires, really bring them out and see them for what they are. Like, I go back to my example of going to see my teacher in the spring. Eventually I looked at what the problem actually was, and the problem was not whether I had sex or not.
No.
The problem was not understanding what was going on. And when I looked at it, I came to understand it. And now I can either be in a relationship or not be in a relationship. It doesn't matter.
So in that sense, those thoughts weren't renounced. The mindfulness of them and the effect of indulging them brought a sort of natural release of them, a natural sort of letting go of that thinking or that indulgence in fantasies.
Well, it's a combination. It's you have to put in the restraint.
Yeah.
In order to see what is actually taking place. You can't just act out of the desire. If you act out of the desire, you're just continuing to ignore. So you have to put some kind of restraint in.
Yeah.
But it's not a forceful repression or a suppression. You want to see what's going on. So you as it were, renounce the worldly object. You renounce acting upon the impulse in order to see the impulse more clearly. But there are aspects of that whole process that you need to see, which is the province of insight meditation. You need to see how transient, unsatisfactory the things of the world are, and your attachment to the things of the world, and the actual process of mind itself. The actual habit of mind needs to be fully comprehended and seen ultimately that it is not self, that none of these component parts can be depended upon for your happiness. Yeah? So it's transcending the whole problem through wisdom, eliminating the attachment through wisdom and transcending it. So that means you can still enjoy the things that the world has to offer. It's not a question of absolute right or wrong about them. It's a question of whether you're suffering or not. And suffering comes from passionately craving and attaching to things in the belief that those can give you ultimate satisfaction. And when you discover that it's impossible, you let go. And that renouncing is completely spontaneous and natural and unforced, and there's no repression, no suppression, from that point on there's no restraint required, because it's been thoroughly comprehended. And so the renunciation is essentially letting go of a dream.
Yeah, thank you.